All right, so let's start this broadcast with a big story that is in fact coming from Britain, where the British politics at this moment appears to be on the boil. Now, according to reports that have come in, Sue Gray, who was a senior civil servant, has now quit her job. And believe it or not, she'll be joining the leader of the opposition Labour Party as the chief of staff of Keir Starmer. The Tories are just not happy because Sue Gray had led the inquiry into the Partygate scandal, which resulted in Boris Johnson tendering his resignation as the Prime Minister back then. Now, Sue Gray has resigned from her job as and will now be taking up the position of Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff. The government has accepted her resignation, but they are reviewing the circumstances under which she resigned. The senior Tory member has said, Jacob Rees-Mogg has said, that the Gray report now looks a bit like a left-wing stitch job against Boris Johnson. In her report, Gray had found a failure of leadership and also judgment in Boris Johnson's 10 Downing Street, as he had hosted multiple parties during the COVID-19 lockdowns. After the Partygate scandal inquiry report, Boris Johnson was fined by the police for attending the birthday party in June 2020, making Boris Johnson the first serving British Prime Minister found to have broken a law while he was in office. The current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, was also fined as part of the controversy. Now, some of Boris Johnson's supporters blamed Sunak for the downfall. They're also now pushing for the former leader's return. Meanwhile, the Labour Party is leading in the opinion polls, and how will all of this, of course, play out in British politics is something that we will, of course, get to know over the course of the next few weeks and months. But for the time being, though, the Tories seem to have got a lot of ammunition that they can actually target the Labour Party with, because Sue Gray, the woman who, in fact, the civil servant who led the investigation into the lockdown parties that were held at 10 Downing Street under Boris Johnson, has now, according to reports, has officially joined the Labour Party. And our correspondent Alex Isaac has been tracking the story very closely for us, and she's joining us live from London on this story. Alex, this of course is going to be a huge controversy in British politics, considering, the trouble that the Tories had because of this Partygate scandal that Boris Johnson's government got involved in. Sue Gray, the civil servant who in fact led the investigation into the Partygate scandal, has now joined the Labour Party.
Well, this has definitely unleashed a lot of conspiracy theories. Not for one, as you just mentioned there, Jacob Rees-Mogg, who said this was a left-wing conspiracy to oust Boris Johnson. But actually, Sue Gray has not yet been given the role. She has to be authorised by the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments, that ACOBA, and they could say that she is unsuitable for that job. And if they do say that, then the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, can step in and say that she cannot have this job outside of Whitehall. Now, Sue Gray herself, Keir Starmer has asked her to be appointed as on his staff, but she has been looking for other jobs as well. So she has been looking for a number of other roles. We do understand that she went for a position in Northern Ireland, but that she didn't get that one. So it does look like she has been looking to leave for quite a while. Whether or not she was always intending to go to Labour, well, that's something that is going to rumble on and on and on. Now, Boris Johnson appointed her personally back to cover the inquiry into Partygate, and obviously her results came out in January 2022. Now, those findings had 126 fines were issued. That it does include Boris Johnson, the one that you mentioned, and also said that there was a failure of leadership, and she blasted the culture within the government and within the cabinet itself, suggesting that there was excessive drinking within the government, and not just for the Conservatives, across the government as a whole. Now, a lot of those are trying to contest her role in Labour, saying that she was not impartial when she was appointed by Boris Johnson, and then in fact that all of the Partygate report that came out was due to the fact that she was always negative against the Conservatives and Boris Johnson herself. However, it has to be clear that Partygate and those parties that happened within lockdown did happen. That wasn't because of Sue Gray and her reports. It's just now the nitty-gritty that's coming out afterwards. So ultimately, there has to be, not on Sue Gray, on the government itself, that they did hold those parties.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Alex Izat, for joining us and getting us all those details. This is a controversy that is not going to die down anytime soon. And we'll, of course, come back to you as more details emerge in this story. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.